Welcome in to the Paul Kuharsky podcast, part of the 440 Sports Network, brought to you by Zen Sports. Good to see you a week before the draft. We're finally going to know who the Titans add to this roster, get this thing over with, and be able to talk about their haul of players instead of this entire pool of players. Always a fantastic day for me based on that, the winnowing of the pool. That is my favorite element of the whole deal. Good to see you here. Retweet, tell your friends, and let's get the crowd in here. This thing behind me is crooked and driving me crazy, so we will straighten for those who are watching. I think that will do better. Glad to see you. Going to talk a little bit about draft information, how that comes out right now, tell you where I am and what I would like to see the Titans do a week away from the pick, and then load up on your questions as we often do. So away we go. Draft information, and I say this every year at this time, what the industrial media draft complex is learning now that comes out as new, quote unquote, new to us, that we learn, like stuff that Bob McGinn is offering from Go Long, Tyler Dunn's very good site, is not new per se. It's new to us. We're learning it, but it's not as if these teams a week out from the draft are just sitting down and hashing out these prospects and coming up with these nuggets or comments from these scouts that are just coming to fruition now. Some of them stupid, some of them insightful, whatever. But the things that we have heard in the last week, in the last month, the things that we will hear in the coming days are new to us. But I think it's important to distinguish that they're not new to the teams. There's not a lot of new information coming to light for football teams right now. Now, they do last-minute checks, and they're checking in on these guys. And there were teams that knew that Rashad Weaver got arrested in a bar, in a tussle that went on outside a bar right before the draft. And there were teams that did not know that. The Titans did not know that. Ultimately, that thing got drawn out and drawn out and drawn out. She became, the alleged victim became a non-cooperative witness, and the whole thing got dropped, and that took forever. It was something I monitored throughout. And some teams are good at calling guys and saying, hey, is there anything I should know about? And some teams are not as good. But David Kelly says, check Twitter names. He's talking about my inaffection for the Titans' failure to see a guy calling himself Lazy Panda and thinking that maybe it wasn't a good idea to draft him. What was Isaiah Wilson, 26th overall? But don't think, as this stuff comes to light, that the teams are dropping stuff. Also, I thought it was interesting. Bill Belichick was on Pat McAfee yesterday or this week and said that, from his vantage point, everything that comes out up to this point is from agents posturing, agents trying to represent their guys and spin their guys well. And that while teams ultimately give out information and try to do some posturing and all of that, that he feels like very few do it before they're kind of finished. And that the stuff you hear in the last day and in the last 12 hours is teams kind of trying to stir things, trying to position things and all of that. But not a lot of it is coming from teams before then, in his estimation. And it certainly wasn't working that way for him. Well, they're maybe the most closed-lipped organization in NFL history. But he was with other teams before that, with the Browns, with the Giants, and knew how things operated there as well. Certainly, things have changed over a lot of time with a lot of organizations that weren't the Patriots. But it's interesting that from his perspective, he doesn't think team stuff is coming out until late. So as we hear new things coming out in the next week, Earlier stuff, consider probably from agents. Later stuff, maybe more likely from team or Bill Belichick. I think that is pretty interesting. If you haven't, I will put out the second semifinal, or did I put it out today? Second semifinal of my Titans draft scenarios game, where I had eight things they could do in the first 3 rounds. I had some trades going into the third round, taking them into the third round. And so that, second semifinal out today. Had them taking Fashanu, Braswell, and Persall with 13, 38, and 44 as A, Alt and Braswell at 7 and 38 as B. We'll get a finalist there, and then we'll put the final 2 that everybody liked head to head and come up with what you liked best out of 8, what I think were reasonable draft scenarios on Twitter for you guys ultimately to vote on. That's been a little bit of an interesting exercise. Some of it has surprised me. So there's that. Here's where I stand right now on what I'd like to see them do. I still feel like there's going to be a trade back scenario available to them. I do not feel like Joe Alt is head and shoulders above the rest of the field at left tackle. I do feel like it's going to be hard to wait on a left tackle until 38. I would like to see them trade back, ideally 12, 13, 11, 12, 13, 14. Saints could come up from 14. Vikings could come up from 11. Raiders, a little bit less likely. Denver, less likely. But 3 of those teams need a quarterback. New Orleans is a bit of a wild card. And I would pick Olu Fashanu, who I think has sunk unreasonably so on a lot of draft boards. Great pass protector. I think could be developed very easily into a better run blocker than he's been. I'm not concerned with the hands. Brad Hopkins was a little bit concerned with the hands when I talked to him, but Kevin Mawai, Michael Roos, and Taylor Lewan all said the hands are not a factor to them at all. Wingspan, much more important. He's fine in that regard. And I think Olu Fashanu would be a very good left tackle for the Titans to get on board. You get a 3rd-round pick out of that deal, and you can address ideally edge rusher and wide receiver or middle linebacker. So you got 3 positions there with 2 picks to address the rest of the way. That's how I hope things shake out at this time. So that's where I stand. I'll obviously write and talk about what I would like to see happen one more time, and see if my feelings change between now and a week from now. So we'll go from there. And with that, we'll move on to your questions and see what's on your mind. I appreciate you being here. Please be sure to subscribe, whatever you're listening to, or to the YouTube channel. Like, rate, review, all of that's a big help. And put out the word right now. We'll get this crowd a little bit bigger, and we'll take off with your questions. Kyle says he thinks Fashanu will be a better pro than Alt, so he certainly likes my situation. And Jabari likes Adunze better than Alt. I wonder what he thinks about Neighbors there. And Jabari says teams overestimate their ability to draft the right player. He wants to get more picks. Thing is, if you think that first pick is a blue chip guy, then you've got to go blue chip guy. I mean, Jordan Pace wants to know how soon is too soon for a defensive tackle Autry replacement. Look, ideally, you'd get an Autry-like guy who is a defensive tackle, a defensive end, and even can kick out to edge. That's a rare guy, right? Robinson from Missouri is cast as a guy that can do that. Increasingly, you're seeing the buzz is that he, not only is he not going to last till 38, he may not make it out of Thursday night in the first round. He's a very good player. So Marshawn Nealand is a guy who sounds like he could be the next one in the pecking order of guys who might have some of that kind of flexibility. He's an edge, but maybe he could play some end. We'll see there. But perhaps this Lumen, I guess, is one of the regular guys who calls me Paula Kuharsky, spelling my name wrong initially. I don't know why calling me a woman's name is some massive insult, but have at it, Chief. Sean wants to know about the possibility of double dipping at tackle. I think that they have to make use of some of the guys on the roster. I can't see them going 1-2 tackle, or if they trade back 2 out of top 3 at tackle. It's possible for sure, but it's got a lot of needs. Like I ticked off there: edge, inside linebacker, wide receiver, all things you'd like to see them hit relatively early. And without the 3rd round pick, that's hard to do. So I don't think 2 offensive linemen, I do think, Nicholas Petit-Frere was disastrous last year, but his rookie season, he was not terrible. He was better than not terrible. And he's a 3rd round pick. And I think you got to give him a chance. And I think Callahan's got to do some developing as part of what he needs to do. Skoronski, I would expect to be significantly better under his tutelage in a second year. The left tackle is going to be a highly picked rookie. Cushenberry is going to be a substantial upgrade at center. You expect Brunskill to be the starting right guard, but Radens could compete there. And at right tackle, NPF and Duncan competing for it. Pete, if Pete is brought in, could be supplemental left tackle if the left tackle isn't, a day 1 starter. I would think a guy drafted at 7 or with a high 1st round pick would be a day 1 starter. If you're drafting a guy at 38, if it's Patrick Paul or somebody like that, he may need a little bit of time. Somebody like Pete could be the starter at the very beginning, but then become, or if you sign him and you have a first day starter, then maybe he's in play for right tackle. But I don't think you're necessarily getting a new right tackle out of this. I really don't. Dennis wants to know, will they draft a wide receiver? I hope they draft a wide receiver. I mean, it's a stacked wide receiver class. Last year, they waited till the 7th round. They laughed at us in the 5th round when they didn't draft one. Ridley's 29. Hopkins is 31. Hopkins only has a year under contract. They'd like to run 3 wide the way Cincinnati did. And they don't have a 3rd wide receiver that's dependable. I think they'd be very wise to get. And there are guys who'd be good options at 38 if they don't wind up with Harrison, unlikely. Neighbors, I think, unlikely. Dunze, maybe more likely. But we'll see how everybody has those guys stacked. PBK says, Paul, Bill Callahan's history is more with bigger-bodied power linemen. I'm not sold he loves Alt. Cosell and Baldinger agreed when I asked. Completely possible. Alt certainly is bigger-bodied in terms of being 6'8", but there are other guys who may be more suited to what he likes, and they could be available with him moving down. Are you who you're thinking then, PBK? I mean, Mims is also a giant. Is he wide enough for you, or is he just vertical? Josh, how you doing? Where do I expect any more safety help to come from? Mid to late picks or one of the vets? Yeah, I think it should be one of the vets. I mean, that's a position there's clearly help on the veteran free agent market. They had Marcus May in for a visit. They talked to Justin Simmons. I think those price tags come down. Those guys get more realistic. I like Quandre Diggs also. 3 veteran options, 2 that they've already shown interest in. I mean, if you're drafting a safety here at, conceivably 4th round, are you getting a starting safety in the 4th round? I mean, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, I don't have a problem if you take one, but I think you'd be better off addressing other positions. You're not getting starters in the 6th and 7th unless you stumble into a miracle, which is unlikely. So, if you take a 7th round safety, he's going to be a special teamer or a practice squatter if he sticks around. But I think they need somebody like May, Simmons, or Diggs. And I think those guys will be available. And I think those guys will be affordable. So that makes sense to me. Let's see what we got here. Bear with me for a second. You guys get the text? I hope my regulars got the text. Josh would prefer them to take an interior guy to compete at right guard later in the draft and hope whoever's on the roster can be their right tackle. Different offense will be interesting too. Bring more passing specific could help. I don't know. Brunskill Radens versus NPF and Brunskill Radens Charles versus NPF and Duncan. I mean, they certainly got more interior options at right guard than they have at right tackle. Ideally, that guy would be able to play both, but I'm more concerned with the edge. But I think you got to be content with the starting left tackle here. They brought in also, I'm not remembering the guy's name, the tackle from Cleveland in exchange for a 7th rounder. He's a project guy, obviously, that Bill Callahan liked from their time together in Cleveland. But he's another guy in the mix, that hopefully could develop into a guy that could play special teams and start in an emergency. Callahan went 3-4 deep at tackle last year. If the Titans are in a position to have to do that, we're expecting they would be significantly better and better equipped in order to be able to do that. And so that would be a good thing. If he liked Tyron Smith, somebody says, they would have signed Tyron Smith. Well, he may like Tyron Smith. He just, with the injury history, they maybe wouldn't have liked Tyron Smith. Shane says, with the emphasis on the passing game, is Olu a better value than Alt if they can trade back? Maybe. Look, they got to run too. I mean, are they going to pass more? Yeah. Do they need to do both? Yeah. Do they need offensive linemen who can do both and do both successfully? Yes. So if Alt was here, he'd need to be a better pass blocker. If Fashanu is here, he's going to need to be a better run blocker. Is it probably easier to get Fashanu to be a better run blocker? Yeah, but I don't think Alt is some terrible pass protector by any means. Ed Henry, would I be okay if entering the season it's Pete at left tackle, Duncan or NPF at right tackle, with Neighbors as your choice of interior defensive lineman or edge at 38 and a 4th round tackle that Callahan develops to replace Pete? No. They have to have a good to great left tackle option. Enough. I mean, who's to say how much better Pete is going to be than Daly or Dillard? It's time to get off of this patchworking left tackle and get a good, no-nonsense left tackle. Also, you can't say, well, you take your choice of interior defensive line and edge at 38. Well, there may not be an interior defensive lineman or edge at 38. What if there's a run in the early 30s on those guys and you wind up empty? You can't prescribe it that way. You have to be more flexible, or to say a 4th round tackle. Well, there could be a lull at left tackle there. So you can't script it that much. Yeah, and this is an important point. TK says, I don't know why everybody thinks Bill Callahan is God. All 4 all-pro left tackles he's coached were 1st round picks. I think it's fair that people think he's a very good offensive line coach. He is a very good offensive line coach. And look, But Brian Callahan has said, you need elite talent. You can't pretend you're going to turn nobodies into elite talent. But to my earlier point, they also need depth because guys go down, and the Titans have had guys go down repeatedly over the last couple of years. And Bill Callahan in Cleveland just went 4 deep. I think a right tackle, and they survived with their third and fourth guys. The way the Titans survived under Keith Carter, believe it or not, in Derrick Henry's 2,000-yard season, when they went from Lewan to Sambrailo to David Quessenberry and got effective enough left tackle play to perform well there. That's what we need to get back to. What we need to see them get back to is if your top guy goes down, your second guy has to be capable of performing at a not embarrassing level. And the Titans haven't been there. They weren't there when Daly took over for Lewan, and they certainly weren't there when they gave the job to Dillard. So I think they need a guy who's got the potential to be elite and a backup who could step up and play at least league average. But ideally better than that. There's going to be no update on Pete until after the draft, obviously. Jonathan Hernandez, take him over Alt. I presume you're asking about Fashanu. I don't think I'd take Fashanu over Alt. Maybe they would head a place. I've also heard that they like Latham. So, I don't know that you take Latham at 7. I think you get out. If they feel the consensus is that Alt and Fashanu are the top 2 guys, then you get in position to draft the third guy. As a media guys, there's something that I look for to try to tell the difference between smoke or real information running up to the draft, Josh asks. Well, what I look for is the draft. The draft helps me delineate between smoke and real information. I mean, you're not going to know. Just not going to know. Everybody thinks they're going to get some miracle tip and the team's going to let out what they're doing. And how often do you get reliable information on what a team's doing? I mean, once in a while, like when the Ravens took Patrick Queen, it's like obvious that they needed an inside linebacker and he was perfect fit and everything. And something like that fits, so nice and neat. Who's a guy in this draft that's like that? Dallas Turner to Atlanta, maybe. Brock Bowers to the Jets, maybe. I don't know. But those are just like obvious things. Those aren't like tips. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are making this point. I'll read Danny's. He said, Bill Callahan can make a good guy great. He can't make a bad guy good. You can't coach talent into a player. I think that's accurate. Let's leave it there. I mean, that's the right assessment, but he can like a guy at 38 or at conceivably in the 3rd round, if they trade for a 3rd round pick, if there's a guy they love, if there's a guy he loves. But I would think they're getting him a 1st or 2nd round pick out of a good tackle class, and that guy's going to be their left tackle, and that they got confidence that they're going to get their guy. And that they know that Alt could go to to Los Angeles, at 5. So, if Alt's their number 1 guy, then they've got a number 2 guy that they like, who they know they could get at 7. Yeah, I just don't buy this. TK's on this narrative that the Titans let the cat out of the bag with CJ Stroud, and that ruined it for everyone. So you think if the Titans called Arizona, what was the draft order last year? Where was Arizona? 2, and the Texans were 4. So if the Titans called Arizona about moving up for CJ Stroud, that would have been it. And Arizona wouldn't have called anybody else to say, hey, we've got an offer on the table and second pick is in play. You interested, Houston? And then Houston wouldn't have said, well, somebody's moving up for Stroud, so we're going to make the offer that we just made. And that's a better offer than the Titans can make. So they're going to wind up with him anyway. I mean, I think people are just way too cut and dried on this. Like, it's pretty obvious that the Titans were in the market for a quarterback and that Stroud was the best fit for them. I don't know if you can get outplayed by a team that is 6 or 7 picks ahead of you in the draft. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. Houston was 2. So Houston could have taken Stroud. It could have taken Anderson. I think Houston did a really good job convincing you and everybody that they were taking Anderson at 2, when obviously the quarterback's the more valuable thing. So they traded back in with Arizona at 3 or at 4. Arizona was 3. So Houston wound up with 2 and 3. I just don't understand how the Titans are supposed to outplay Arizona when Arizona's outplay Houston when Houston's sitting at 2, knowing that if a team's going to come up and Houston's got a good relationship with Austin Fort, just like the Titans do, like if that media report didn't come out, do we think that Houston's got no inkling that the Titans are interested in a quarterback? Do we think that Houston hasn't called Arizona and said, hey, if anything's brewing, we like they came up with that deal on the spot? Like, oh my God, Rossini said the Titans are interested in CJ Stroud. We hadn't thought of that. Now we're going to call Arizona and make a big deal. I just don't think that's how it went down. Who will punt in the short term? Ty Zentner is on the roster. Look, Stonehouse could be ready sooner. I gave, I wrote what the 9-month timetable would take him to the start of the season. 8-month timetable, which some guys have, would take him to the start of camp. So what's my expectation for the Titans season in 2024? This guy, Brandon, wants to get away from the draft. Understand we've been identified as having the 6th strongest schedule next season. Well, I don't really believe in strength of schedule unless that's a strength of schedule that comes from Warren Sharp, who looks at like Las Vegas odds as opposed to last year's record. Because last year's record, teams change a lot from one season to the next. But I can't get away from the draft for a sec to tell you what my expectations of the Titans 2024 season are, because I don't know who the left tackle is or who's doing the pass rushing or if they have a third receiver or all of that. So I don't really start to craft my expectations until I know the roster. And then I'm not big on predictions. I mean, I think they should be in position to compete. I think it'd be hard for them to compete with Houston for the top of the division, though the 3-game schedule difference is significant. Look, I think Chad Brinker said it very well when I talked to him at the annual meetings. You don't know. I mean, you got a new coaching staff and a very new roster. How quickly does it gel? If it gels fast, things could get good fast. But it's not unreasonable if it takes a while to gel. And if it takes a while to gel, then, it could take a while for them to show improvement. And that wouldn't be unreasonable. I don't think that they're, if they're a playoff team, they're a wild card team, and they're probably one and done. Somebody's asking if I know Greg Doyle. I do know Greg Doyle, and I like Greg Doyle. I think Greg Doyle's a good writer. Look, you never know. Ed Henry's asking, what's my percentage chance of a trade back? It seems low to him unless a quarterback's there at 7 that somebody really likes. I mean, that's obviously gives it the highest chance if a quarterback's there, if the fourth quarterback has lasted till 7. But every year there's some kind of surprise, right? But we remember New Orleans and Marcus Davenport, was it? Nobody foresaw New Orleans coming up to get Marcus Davenport, but teams fall in love with a guy that they have to come up and get some years, and you could be the beneficiary of that. So you just don't know. I know you guys want like concrete stuff on some stuff, but you don't know. Adam's asking me if I prefer Simmons over May. I would be happy with either. I'd probably give a slight edge to May. But I think I'd be happy with either. What I think is the biggest difference between Vrabel and Callahan in regards to the draft? Well, with regard to last year and this year, the biggest difference is that we know that Rand Carthon has the final say. Last year, I think some of those picks may have been Vrabel, straight up. We don't know. But I think Callahan also, compared to Vrabel at the beginning, Callahan has more of a scouting background than Vrabel had because he worked for Cincinnati. And if you look at Cincinnati's front office roster right now, Cincinnati has 2 scouts and 2 scouting directors, which, you could shape however you want. Callahan was polite about it, but that's the Brown family being cheap. But they've also found a path to success. I mean, the Bengals are a pretty good football team now. And they've been successful at it, but they asked their coaches to be their scouts for February, March, and April, which is double duty. Now they've got a good coaching staff, so that's gone well. It didn't go as well in the past. It didn't win in playoff games under Marvin Lewis for a long tenure. But Callahan has written a lot of scouting reports as an assistant coach in the last 5 years in Cincinnati. Mike Vrabel wasn't doing that for the couple of years that he was in Houston. So there's a difference at the start of their coaching careers in terms of the degree to which they were involved in scouting, and their scouting responsibilities were different. Let me tell you about our sponsor here. I've lost my coaster. No, there it is. Zen Sports. Zen Sports. If you live in Tennessee or if you are here regularly, you need to download the Zen Sports app. It is a terrific place to bet. All you need to do is download the Zen Sports app, use the code TNPaul to sign up. TNPaul, my first name, not my last name. My last name would be a little bit tougher to put in there. But if you do that and you make a $10 bet, you get a free year subscription to paulkuharsky.com. If you're not a member, which is silly, if you're in here, you've probably been in here before. You should be a member by now. But if you're not, here's an easy route for you to get in. And that you may make a $10 bet at the beginning, but you'd be wise to make a bigger bet because they have a first no danger wager on their first bet. So you can bet up to $1,000 on something that is plus 500 or less. Win it and you're golden. Lose it and you got no stress because within 24 hours, you get your $1,000 back and you start again. It's a great deal from Zen Sports. Check them out. They've been very good to me. I hope you'll be very good to them. That's a good place. A lot of good stuff coming up on the docket here. You've got Champions League stuff coming up after you've seen the results from the last couple days. You've got hockey playoffs and basketball playoffs, and you've got MLB light day today, but you can line up what's coming up for the weekend. Really good stuff. Zen Sports. Jump all over it. Give me one more retweet if you haven't retweeted. Let people know we're here, and we'll continue for a while here as I get ready for Sunset Middle School's big game today. It's 8th grade day. 8th grade day. I might get a flower. What % chance do they say it's 7? 79%. 79%, David Jackson, that they say it's 7. It's a good question. I mean, what do you think is the lowest the Titans would consider trading down to? Questioner is a bit concerned about the potential of missing out on elite talent that we so desperately need. Well, that's why I don't think they would trade down that far. I mean, I don't think Cincinnati's going to come up, but there's a trade that lines up very nicely with pick 18. And I think at 18, you could still get one of the top left tackles. I wouldn't go that far. That might be as far as I'd go, but you'd have to have a really good read on what was going. Adam wants to know, would I trade 7 and a second next year for 11 and 22? That's too rich. You don't need to give up a second next year to get 11 and 23. You could trade 7 and maybe the 4th for 11 and 23. You could trade 7 and 38 for 11 and 23. Second next year is too rich for me. I'd rather trade the second this year. I don't love that trade. Trey's oldest daughter is turning 10. Any advice for the next decade? For you, spend as much time with her as you can in the next 4 years, because she's going to increasingly spend time with her friends, more time with her friends and less time with you. Josh says he's been a subscriber for years. I appreciate the faithfulness. Curious if the All-22 has draft info that I could share with the open live. If they did have info, I could not share it here because they get info that you do not get. I don't know what info I've given them lately that I haven't given you. I don't think they have any special draft info, though. I don't really try to get special draft info. I've never been particularly good at getting special draft info with the coaches, the GMs, or the scouts that I've been closest to. I think it puts them in a very awkward position to ask them questions that I don't think that they can answer. So it's not a place where I gain a lot of information. And sometimes it's not good to get information that you can't use. Like, why do I want to call in a chip to get information that's off the record that I can't do anything with? I'd rather call in a chip to get information that I can use, or that I could take somewhere else and get confirmed and use, or that I could build something on. But if Brian Callahan right now told me, we're really, Brock Bowers really isn't somebody that we're looking at, but you can't do anything with that. Well, how would that serve me? He would have done me a solid by giving me a good piece of information there. And it would be good relationship building and trust and the like. But that's not a good reporter source exchange there, because it doesn't, I'm in the know, but I can't even that, he wouldn't be giving me that in a way where I could say, yeah, I don't feel very good about the Titans taking Brock Bowers. He wouldn't like to give it to me where I could say that. I don't feel like the Titans are going to take Brock Bowers. Well, I don't feel like the Titans are going to take Brock Bowers. I'm already saying. If I said it with more backbone because Callahan told me that, it wouldn't serve him well. Why would he tell me that? So you get where I'm going? Hill says the question he or she, is, do I really think 4 quarterbacks are going to go in a row, or 4 out of 6? I think there's a good chance, but I'm with you on this. I think it's a little bit crazy to automatically think that the trade goes to Arizona at 4, that you have 3 quarterbacks to 3 quarterback needy teams. And then the next team, I hope that's not the start of hiccups. The next team trades up automatically to 4, and then Arizona gets the windfall of the team that's coming up to get presumably McCarthy. What if there's no deal to be had with Arizona? There probably is. Or what if there's just not, what if it doesn't happen with Arizona? And what if the trade is to you feel like you have to get ahead of the Giants, or maybe maybe the trade is with the Chargers, or maybe the Giants stick and pick at 6 and just take the quarterback, and there's not a trade there. A lot of people are doing that. At the site right now, you can read, yesterday, Mike Herndon hit 25 guys that he really likes and he really thinks fit the Titans. This is from first-round caliber to late-round caliber. Phenomenal read. So roll up your sleeves and take your time with it, the kind of thing that, in my experience with you, my readership, I know that you really like. And it's one of Mike's favorite files to do every year. Tremendous read. And then Zach Lyons, this morning I posted, he looks very thoroughly at 3 edge guys who would fit the Titans and bring a lot to the pass rush to pair with Harold Landry, and make Arden Key kind of a third guy. So Landry, Key, and one of these guys would really up the ante for the Titans. Tomorrow morning, Blake Bedingfield's mock draft. So tons of draft stuff at paulkuharsky.com. You're not going to want to miss any of it. I'm standing up hard for Herndon and Lyons, who do tremendous analysis and really study the film and look at these guys, have a great understanding of what Callahan and Carthon and Brinker have said and their histories. There's another slap who pretends to be some kind of analyst on Twitter and on social media who's saying, these guys are the same as him. They are not. And I'll tell you, main differentiators that I've brought these guys on board to write at my site, and I would never even think about the other guy who's not in the same ballpark at all. So check it all out. Come read it. Yeah, Miles mentions another guy who would never be participating in paulkuharsky.com. Who's the worst team to cover? I mean, I don't know what the Raiders are like now. Raiders have traditionally been difficult. The Raiders helped me out, though, when I was in a big pinch for a Hall of Fame thing, so I can't issue any complaints. Saints used to be very difficult, and I suspect the Broncos are very difficult now. I think Sean Payton it sets things up to be very, very difficult, Trey asking, in conjunction with Logan Grady. But I don't know. When I covered the entire division, and those PR staffs have changed and the coaches and the GMs have changed, but they were all very accommodating to me. And I have a lot of friends from those teams who have scattered around the league or are retired or have moved on to other ventures. From a media reporter standpoint, what stands out from the Carthon-Callahan regime so far versus Vrabel and Robinson? Well, they're willing to paint more of a picture. I mean, I wrote a story from the owners' meetings after sitting down with after sitting down with Carthon and Brinker, where they kind of painted a picture for me of how the Snead trade unfolded. And I don't think John and Mike would have ever given me that kind of look behind the scenes. It's just schools they came from is taboo to share stuff like that. I might have gotten some of that off the record, unreportable, or maybe a little bit without names on it, but never open conversation about how it went down, which to me is a harmless story, very informative to fans and very interesting. So far, they've been more open, and I think we're going to be able to tell more stories that have more texture to them. I hope that's the case. I'm excited that might be the case. Would I take 3 times my salary to cover a team in my least favorite city? Look, my 3 least favorite cities, well, Memphis is the worst city in America, Atlanta and Detroit. Detroit's largely weather related, and Detroit's done a nice job of revitalizing. But I mean, I walked to Detroit to Joe Louis Arena to cover a Red Wings Predators game one time. and I was sweating on my way there. When I walked back, it was snowing. So, I mean, that's miserable. I would not take 3 times my salary to live in Memphis, Tennessee, I don't think. And Atlanta is just a miserable, miserable place. It's terribly planned. The traffic is terrible. I don't see how anybody could like Atlanta. Would I take 3 times my salary to cover a team? The other thing is like covering a team. Like, are you saying that I could be in Atlanta and have like the wealth of knowledge and relationships in Atlanta that I already have from Tennessee, or am I starting from zero? I'm not really interested in starting from zero anywhere. If I could kind of transplant where I am in my career to there, I'd have to think about it probably. Danny is answering somebody else and says the Titans have too many holes to take Bowers at 7. I certainly agree with that. I mean, look, the guy would be great to have on your team. He could work as your slot and do a lot of blocking, but still not the same kind of dynamic player that Neighbors would be. It doesn't solve your left tackle problem. I just don't see it. You got to take premier positions with premier picks. And after taking a guard at 11, I don't think you can take a tight end at 7 or at 13. Kane says, where would I stay in Nashville if I was coming in for a game? Well, the thing is, I mean, everybody's got some kind of budget. I've got a great, great travel sponsor, and I live nicely on the road. I certainly am not staying in shacks by any means, thanks to Brymac for all your commercial and HVAC and plumbing needs. Call Brymac 931-572-5742, 931-572-5742. But I usually find a good deal at some kind of Marriott property. You're not finding a good deal at some kind of Marriott property or any property on Broadway. I'd probably wind up in Midtown. If I came to Nashville for a game, I would not get a car. I would Uber. I would Uber from Midtown downtown to the Southern to have a steak and to peruse downtown a little bit. I'd get in early. I'd get to sleep, and I'd probably I'd Uber early enough that maybe I could go across the bridge. I don't know. But the rooms downtown sometimes are comparable to New York City on a given weekend. So it'd be impossible to stay downtown. If the Titans have a deal in place with Pete after the draft, then why wouldn't they sign it before the draft? Like, that makes no sense that they have a deal in place with Pete. I got a suspicion of where that comes from. And the guy just doesn't understand how the league works. Like, if they have a deal, then why wouldn't they execute the deal? And why would Pete agree to a deal that had contingencies on what they do in a draft? Scrolling through some of your questions here. I appreciate you guys. Yeah, Airbnb trade doesn't give me any Marriott points. I'm a Marriott point guy. Went to Paris on Marriott points. Went to Pompano Beach for a week on Marriott points. Love the Marriott points. Nick wants to know, a lot of talk about trading back for more draft capital. Any chance we move up a spot or two? I sure hope they don't move up a spot or two. Move up a spot or two, you give up draft capital. Give up draft capital for a team that has as many needs as the Titans have. It's not the way to build the roster. Do I think that I am going to buy stacking the inbox? With what? No, I'm not going to buy stacking the inbox. Merge with? I don't know. We haven't had any kind of conversations like that. I think Zach does a great job over there. I think we're both relatively small for corporate mergers. Robert says can I truly sense a pleasant change in the building? He feels like people were tiptoeing around Vrabel. People did tiptoe around Vrabel. But the thing is that Vrabel is kind of miscast as some kind of mean tyrant. Vrabel, very pleasant guy, fun to talk to. Came in and learned everybody's name, talked to the janitors and the secretaries and the, maintenance guys and all of that. Fun guy to hang out with, talk to, bullshit with. Very personable guy. Not Belichickian, not one of these guys you can't make eye contact with in the hallway and all of that. Now, when it comes to certain business things, were people afraid of him in certain regards? Sure. How do I feel about the revamped office structure? I mean, I've said this. I think it's a little weird. I think Chad Brinker having a title that's bigger than Rand Carthon's title when Rand Carthon's in charge of personnel is odd. But I'm waiting to see how it all pans out. Aubrey says Uber's the best way for going to a game in Nashville. It's the only way for going to a game in Nashville. 200 parking spots they found. I tweeted this earlier, and if you're a season ticket member who had parking, you're in a lottery. They sent you an email. You're in a lottery for one of those 200 parking spots to buy it because they now know the construction footprint. But getting the game is going to be a whole new challenge for the next couple of years. Brett Wallace said it. I didn't. He appreciates me going live at this time of day. Sports radio during this time slot isn't the best in Nashville. I'll tell you a secret. Sports radio in most time slots isn't the best in Nashville. There, I said it. Robbie and Rex Road, 6 to 9, weekday mornings on 102.5 The Game is excellent sports talk radio. Beyond that, we can have a conversation about what's good. Wouldn't be a very long conversation. Yes, Trey, me too. Jesse asks, what are the chances the Titans sign another quarterback to compete for the third/emergency quarterback slot? Who says the Titans are going to have a third/emergency quarterback? I think it's pretty likely that they won't unless somebody's hurt. They'll have a quarterback on the practice squad who's available to do that. I think Malik doesn't make the roster. I said that last year. I think Malik doesn't make the roster, and I think they'll have a practice squad guy who is there in case something happens, who can be moved up and be the backup quarterback. But I think it's awfully hard to have that third quarterback. Number one with a very interesting question. Would I take 3 times my salary to be Pravda for a team? What he's asking is, would I take 3 times my salary to be a team's media guy? Would I take 3 times my salary to technically take a check from the Shield? I couldn't. I mean, I've not been in a situation where somebody's given me that offer, right? And the NFL pension is unbelievable. But let's say this, no team is ever going to offer me that job based on my resume, based on watching these videos, based on reading my material. So it's not anything I'd ever have to worry about, right? What's the best thing I've watched recently? I watched Chelsea beat Everton 6-0. I watched Cole Palmer with a hat trick in 28 minutes. I haven't been watching much drama. I could use, you know what I watched? I watched Juliet Naked, old movie with, I'm going to forget his name now. Come on, what's the dude's name? He was with us on Midday 180 one time, and he's really cool. And I'm picturing his face, and I can't think of his name. Somebody help me out. I could use a show to stream. I really could. Do I think Phillips or Burks has a higher chance of turning it around with Brian Callahan as head coach? Jonathan asks. I think Phillips. Would I take 3 times my salary to replace John Sterling as the Yankees radio play-by-play guy? I absolutely would, but I'm totally not qualified for it. Totally not qualified for it. All right, I got time for 1 or 2 more here. This has been fun. I appreciate you guys. A lot of fun. Josh asked, do I think Malik was a Robinson or Vrabel guy? I think it was a Robinson guy. I think Robinson's eyes lit up. He thought he was too good to pass up based on the hype. Do I think, Kane says, do I think Levis is happy going from Vrabel to Callahan or indifferent? Well, once the move happens, you don't have much, there's nothing you can do about it. So you go with it. And look, on the one hand, he's going to somebody that didn't choose him. Now, we don't know how into him Vrabel was, and he doesn't know how into him Vrabel was in terms of drafting. But, I think it's better for Levis to be in a Callahan offense. That's, look, Callahan's better offensive coach than anybody that Vrabel had on his staff during Levis's year, for sure. So I think he should be pretty happy, pretty content with what things are now. And I think Levis is a pretty loose guy. I don't think he's stressing out about much. Would I rather, you guys are coming up with some good stuff here. Would I rather be in the war room on draft night for the first round or get to listen to contract trade negotiations during free agency? Given this exact thing, I'd rather be in the war room on draft night. But if I could be in the free agent meeting where they set the free agent strategy, this is plan A. If this doesn't work, then we'll do that. If that doesn't work, then we'll do this, where they laid out kind of their map. I would rather be in the free agent meeting, I think. Largely based on, I don't know. That's a really good question. But I think I'd rather be in that free agent meeting. The war room's pretty damn good. That's a great question, Logan. Really good question. I've heard good things about Shogun, Shane. I might like to read the book first. Jonathan says, do we think we'll ever get more info about the way things went down between J-Rob and Vrabel? Like who backed a player or who backed this or that? I mean, the way things went down between J-Rob and Vrabel is Amy fired J-Rob. That's the way things went down. Not sure what you're asking exactly. Mr. G says Nashville radio needs 3 hours PK every day. Tell the game. Robbie Rexroad and Kuharsky has a nice ring to it, I think. Is Oppenheimer as good as advertised? I would like to know the answer to that because Ethan Hawke is the guy in Juliet Naked. And Ethan Hawke visited with Midday 180 and he was very cool. We had a very cool time with him. He was a totally regular dude. And I think he's done some good work in Juliet Naked, which is by Nick Hornby, who's written some really good stuff, including High Fidelity, which wasn't about the Red Sox. It was about Arsenal. I would like to watch Oppenheimer. I think my wife and I probably would have to break it in half. Trey says Oppenheimer is 100% worth it. Hey, this podcast will be out on Apple, Spotify, iHeart, And while it's been broadcast live on YouTube, it will sit and wait on YouTube as it will sit and wait on Twitter. Tell your friends, point them there, give it, subscribe, rate, review, all of those important things. They help me out tremendously. Go to Zen Sports, download the app, use my code TNPaul. That helps everybody out. I appreciate your support, all the good questions in here. This was a lot of fun. Stay tuned for the Paul Kuharsky podcast again next week. So much good stuff on the site right now. You should be reading all of it. Please check it out. Until I see you again, don't block the box, and be sure, please, please, to lock your locks. See ya. I'm like Trump holding the Bible.